Superheroes are meant to feel invincible. We look up to them because they give us hope. They inspire us to be better and feel like there is always light at the end of the tunnel. They have extraordinary abilities and always use them for good, trying to make the world a better place no matter what. They fight off dangerous villains and take brutal hits, but at the end of the day, they always get back up. As kids, we would watch our favorite superheroes on TV weekly. Every episode, they would face a new villain, a new obstacle to overcome, and they would always come out on top and live to fight another day. We were basically programmed from a very young age to expect them to always win, no matter what. That is what makes it so much more shocking when our heroes don't win and can no longer get back up. Ultimate Spider-Man by Brian Michael Bendis is one of my favorite comic book runs of all time. Whenever someone asks me how to get into comics or for a series recommendation, this is always the first book that pops into my head. One of the biggest obstacles for people trying to first start reading comics is how confusing they can be. Characters like Spider-Man have been around since the early 60s, and over the years, those characters have been written by a multitude of different writers, all with their own unique and crazy visions. In the late 90s, Marvel's comic sales were down because it was just too complicated for new readers to find a good jumping on point for these characters. So they decided to create a whole new universe, one where each character would start from scratch and be given a modernized origin story fit for the times they were being written in. This was known as the Ultimate Universe, and it gave us one of the greatest interpretations of Peter Parker / Spider-Man of all time. If you love long-form storytelling, world building, and character development, then Ultimate Spider-Man is the perfect series for you. The OG Spider-Man comics handled Peter's origins very quickly. Uncle Ben died in the same issue Peter got his powers, and we barely even got to spend any time with him, so his death really didn't have much emotional impact. Bendis wrote a much more slower-paced origin story, as Uncle Ben didn't even die until issue number 4, which allowed us to get to know the characters, see Peter use his powers for things he shouldn't have, like winning money pro wrestling, and be given that great power comes great responsibility talk. As you can see, the Sam Raimi trilogy took a lot of inspiration from this series. Ultimate Spider-Man went on for 10 years with a 160 issue run that gave us one of the best conclusions to any Spider-Man story ever. The final arc in the series, Death of Spider-Man. Peter had been Spider-Man for about a year at this point in the series. He had just celebrated his 16th birthday among his family and friends. The series was doing something pretty fun and original where Aunt May was taking in a bunch of homeless teenagers, including Gwen, Johnny Storm the Human Torch, and Bobby Drake Iceman. I personally loved this idea. It just made Peter's home life feel that much more alive, and it was kind of cozy just reading the crazy dynamics of this superhero household. Anyways, a few days after his birthday, Peter and MJ go out on a lunch date, but are interrupted by Captain America picking up Peter for superhero training. You see, over the past year of Peter being Spider-Man, he attracted a lot of attention from S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Ultimates, which is the name of the Avengers in this universe. Some of them think he is too reckless because there was always a lot of property damage when he fights bad guys, but after a vote between Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, they decide to train Peter and help him become a greater hero because they see his potential. Peter tells MJ he needs to go, and they say I love you to each other, but little do they know that this is the last time they will be able to tell each other that. Cap explains to Peter that he needs to be more careful with his life, but right as Cap is giving his advice, he is called away to help win a giant battle that is happening in New York. As this happens, Norman Osborn breaks out of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s containment center alongside some of the strongest villains Peter had ever helped lock up over the series, including Doc Ock, Electro, Sandman, Kraven, and Vulture. The villains hide out in the city and see the news of the giant Avengers level battle happening in New York. Norman knows this helps them because the authorities will be way too preoccupied to come after them. He tells them that they should take advantage of the situation and kill Peter Parker, finally getting revenge for locking them up in prison. But Otto objects to this idea as he just wants to go back to his life as a scientist, saying he no longer wants to be a career criminal, telling Norman it's pointless to seek revenge for some 16-year-old kid. Norman does not take this well and fully crashes out on Otto, sending him flying out the window. The two start fighting, but Otto is no match, and Norman, filled with rage, murders him in the street. Peter quickly finds out that his most dangerous villains have escaped, and because they know his identity, he rushes home to warn Aunt May and Gwen. They pack up to leave and May begs Peter to come with them, but he tells her that he needs to stay and do this. They leave and Peter promises them that he will be careful. Peter searches the city for Norman and the other villains, stumbling across Otto's dead body. This right here is such a crazy moment. Peter is genuinely in shock over what Norman did to Otto, and this makes him realize he can't play around, and that his villains are out for blood. During the giant battle in New York, the Punisher was hired to shoot Captain America. Peter sees this as he searches the city and at the very last second pushes Cap out of harm's way, but unfortunately gets hit by the bullet instead. Peter wakes up alone in the middle of the city as he bleeds heavily from the wound. As he contemplates if he should go to the hospital for treatment, revealing his secret identity, he sees the villains heading towards his house. This adrenaline rush keeps him going. He webs up his wound and chases after them. Johnny and Bobby arrive at Peter's house just minutes before Osborn and the villains do. I love this moment so much because these dudes had no clue who these random teens were. They thought they would give them no trouble, but they never expected Peter to be living with a member of the Fantastic Four and the X-Men. The Human Torch and Iceman take on all 5 of these supervillains without hesitation, but they aren't strong enough to fight them all at once. Right as the villains beat them, Peter arrives, and you cannot tell me this man does not have aura. He pulls up without his mask because they already know his identity, but Peter also just doesn't care anymore. He is hurt incredibly bad and is about to take on 5 of his most powerful enemies. He probably thinks he's about to die. Vulture charges right at him and Peter webs him in the face, tossing him over the houses, asking the other 4 who's next. You can see just how much pain he is in, but he still tries to keep his cool to not let them know he is weak right now. Peter bluffs, telling them that S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers are on their way, but they see right through the lie and immediately realize that he is wounded. Every punch that he delivers puts him through excruciating pain, but he still fights his very hardest. The civilians that live in the neighborhood begin to circle Peter and call 911 for help, but there isn't enough time. Peter continues to get the shit kicked out of him as this 1v5 is just way too much for him. Aunt May gets a call from one of the neighbors telling her that Peter is being killed outside of their house, causing her to turn the car around and rush back home. At this point, Peter has nothing left in the tank. Some of his neighbors offer him help, but then Electro charges up the killing blow. Right before Electro shoots a beam at him, he gets shot through the chest, causing a giant electric shock that takes out Sandman, Vulture, Kraven, and him. Peter is shocked to see that it was Aunt May who fired the gun. She arrived just in time to save him. She yells for someone to call an ambulance as Peter continues to bleed out. But just as it seems like he might make it out of this alive, Norman Osborn wakes up ready to get his revenge. Peter prioritizes everyone else's lives around him over his own. He pleads for Johnny to wake up and help him, and he does, but his fire powers have no effect on the Green Goblin. It's only up to Peter to save the day now. He is so dizzy he can barely stand, cracking a classic Spider-Man joke even in his last moments as Norman prepares to deliver the finishing blow. Right before he does, Mary Jane rams right into him with a truck that she hotwired. Peter thanks MJ, kisses her one last time, and throws her to safety. She allowed him to be the one to finish the fight as the victor. Peter slams the injured Green Goblin with the full weight of the truck. Mary Jane smiles because Peter won, but suddenly the truck explodes after taking all that damage, sending Peter flying onto the lawn. Peter now knows he can't survive this. Johnny and MJ plead for help for someone to call 911, but there isn't enough time. Aunt May and Gwen surround him too, yelling and crying, not knowing what to do. Peter is the only one with a smile on his face, because he's accepted this is how he dies, and is just happy that he was able to save his friends and family. He tells Aunt May, "It's okay, I did it. Don't you see? It's okay. I did it. I couldn't save him. I couldn't save Uncle Ben, no matter what I did, but I saved you. I did it." Peter's grip on Aunt May's jacket loosens as his eyes close and he passes. Johnny, Gwen, Aunt May, and MJ mourn the person that brought them all together and inspired them to be more. In the follow-up miniseries Ultimate Fallout, we see how New York and the superhero world reacts to the death of Spider-Man, and it's just heart-wrenching. We see J. Jonah Jameson try to find the right words to remember Spider-Man by, and Johnny Storm take out his anger because he wasn't able to save him. Tony Stark fully pays for the funeral, which takes place at one of the cathedral churches in New York, surrounded by civilians who want to pay their respects to the fallen hero. Aunt May says she doesn't want a funeral this big, but Tony says the city needs to mourn him too. May feels angry that she let Peter be Spider-Man and let him put himself in danger, but as she walks past the crowd of people, she is reminded why Peter did it. A little girl in the crowd asks her if she is Spider-Man's mommy, and tells May that when she was little, Spider-Man saved her from a fire so that she didn't die. This breaks May, Gwen, and Tony, and then the little girl asks May if she needs a hug, giving her the first reason to smile since Peter died. This moment is just so good, I tear up every time I read it. When they enter the church and sit down, Captain America apologizes to May, saying it was his fault that Peter died because the bullet was meant for him. This leads May to slap Steve in the face and yell at him about how him and S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't think Peter was a good enough hero, even though he was just a kid. During the funeral, everyone is sad with their heads down, except for Thor, because Thor knows that Peter is in a better place. A place only noble and courageous people can go to. A place legends never die. Valhalla. And then we see Peter celebrating the afterlife with other fallen heroes like Wolverine, Cyclops, Ant-Man, and the Wasp. Just an absolutely beautiful image. So yeah, that's the Death of Spider-Man story arc. I know a lot of people think comic book deaths can be a bit gimmicky and only made to get people's attention, but to me, this is one of the best Spider-Man stories ever put to paper. Like I said at the beginning, heroes feel invincible, so if there ever is a story when they do die, it gives me this really weird feeling. It almost feels unnatural, like it's not supposed to happen, like it isn't right, but I suppose that is what death can feel like in real life. Spider-Man will always be the character I look up to the most for inspiration, so if a creator ever decides to kill Peter off, it has to be peak and give the moment the gravity that it needs. I think Ultimate Spider-Man executed the death of this beloved character flawlessly. What makes this death so tragic is Peter's age. He was only 16 and had already accomplished so many great things in his first year as Spider-Man. He would have had such a bright future ahead of him if it wasn't cut so short. Peter did not die in vain though. Spider-Man would be remembered and the values he stood for would be carried on by Miles Morales. Peter died happy, knowing that he was able to save his friends and family and keep his friendly neighborhood safe. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on the ending. I'm curious to know if others think it was a worthy death for the character. I'm going to start doing a lot more comic-based content on this channel because there are just so many incredible stories I want to share and discuss with you guys. If you have any recommendations or requests for other comic storylines, I'm all ears. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.